Coming up on American Black Journal, we're going to hear about a new project, a group that brings people together to share ideas on building better communities. Plus, our friend jazz violinist Regina Carter receives another national honor, and we'll remember the legacy of human rights activist Randall Robinson. Don't go away. American Black Journal starts right now.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm your host, Stephen Henderson. Urban Consulate is a network for the exchange of ideas on building just and equitable communities. The conversations take place in cities all across the country, including right here in Detroit. On April 5th, Urban Consulate is launching a new video series that highlights the wisdom of visionary changemakers. The collection is called Urban Consulate in Session, and it kicks off with an in-person conversation between Detroit Urban Consulate host Orlando Bailey and New York Times best-selling author Jason Reynolds. It'll be at the Garden Theater. I spoke with Orlando and one of the video series instructors, Shari Davis, from the Participatory Budgeting Project in Oakland, California. Orlando Bailey and Shari Davis, welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you for having us, Stephen. We're excited.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
Okay, Orlando, I'm going to start with you. Tell me about Urban Consulate in Session, how you come up with this, and what you guys are hoping to achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. First, I want to tell you a little bit about Urban Consulate. For those folks who may have been living under a rock since 2015, Urban Consulate is a space.
It's been around a while now.
It's been around, but it's a space where we convene people to have critical conversations about cities. And I came on as host in 2018, and we've explored cities in a really multifaceted way, from equitable development to equity in jobs, equity in construction. We talk a little bit about community development in that sector, just all kinds of things that amazing Black people are doing in the city and around the nation. And so in 2021, we released a survey asking our audience, what do you want to learn about? If you could learn about one specific thing or multiple things, what would it be, right? And so we got feedback around participatory budgeting, equitable real estate, commercial development, architecture, but with an activist approach, narrative power and storytelling, as well as community organizing and, artistry, right? And so we took that feedback and we did a national scan and a local scan of like who the experts are in these particular areas. And for participatory budgeting, who other than Shari Davis? But like in the arts field, right, we talked to Jessica Care Moore, and community organizing, Davita Davison, Darnell Adams for equitable development, Dr. Craig Wilkins for activist architecture, myself for amplifying Black voices, right? Folks who are in this space doing the work, who can teach an audience how to do it. And so it's our version of a masterclass, quote unquote, but we're calling it In Session.
Yeah. So, Shari, you're from the Participatory Budgeting Project in Oakland, California. I want to have our viewers learn a little more about that, but also how that connects in with what Urban Consulate's doing.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, and it's so good to see you, Orlando. The Participatory Budgeting Project's mission is to transform democracy. And at the center of that is centering community members most impacted by public budgets and decisions. And so that is Black and Brown people, folks that have been formerly and currently incarcerated, individuals that may have been pulled into the justice system or have a jaded experience by local government. They may also have an experience that looks like a long history of exclusion. Participatory budgeting and participatory democracy creates the opportunity for people to build power, to make decisions that are equitable, to build processes that are accessible, to decide over things that impact their lives in a significant way. And so we build and design process with community that looks like community members having a say over what the process design looks like. That looks like building spaces for radical imagination, for folks closest to the issues, to really dream about solutions and use their practical lived experience to direct investments toward building communities that work for us, that are built by us. And I think that's really how it connects to the amazing work that's happening with the Urban Consulate and with this opportunity for In Session for folks to really understand or be introduced to innovative opportunities for folks to kind of direct what happens around them.
So give me some examples of how this ends up looking different in communities where you're doing it than the processes and the institutions that we already have, like in government and business and nonprofit. What does adding these other voices to the process end up looking like?
Participatory democracy and participatory budgeting is radically different. And this has been a growing movement, right? And so it's relatively new in the United States, but in the last 13-ish years where we've seen participatory budgeting grow, it's grown from instances where community members are maybe deciding on a couple $100,000 or deciding on maybe $1 million in their community to multi-million-dollar processes, like what's happening in LA right now with the LA repair process. And repair is a long acronym, but one of those words, one of those R's in there is about reparations. Yeah. And so what does it look like for community members to be able to address harm by directing resources into most harmed communities historically and traditionally? That's what the LA repair process is like. And participants in that process are saying things like, wow, I've never had an opportunity to make decisions about public funds. I've never had an opportunity to actually drive resources to root causes that I experience and that my expertise, my lived experience in this community says are very present and valid. It also looks like one of the largest participatory budgeting processes in the country right now, which is in Seattle. It's a nearly $30 million participatory budgeting process that includes a multi-million-dollar divestment from the local police department. And again, an opportunity for community members to direct how that funding is spent to build safe, strong communities.
Yeah.
How serendipitous is it, Stephen, that right now Detroit is going through budget season, right? And the fact that we just erected a reparations task force to look at the feasibility of what that could look like in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, we've been kind of circling around this idea of more participatory budgeting, more inclusive decision-making in the city. I think we're going to get there sooner rather than later. At least I hope we do. I do want to talk a little about Jason Reynolds and the session that you're planning with him. Talk about that.
Yeah, so Jason Reynolds, he just finished his term as the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature with the Library of Congress. He's a #1 New York Times bestselling author and literally one of my favorite people to read and to watch. And so with the amazing experts that are featured in session, we wanted a premiere that was splashy with a name that would get people out, revved up and excited about it. And Jason Reynolds, I mean, who's a better ambassador for learning in the United States than Jason Reynolds. And so on April the 5th at the Garden Theater at 6:30, I will be in conversation on stage at the Garden Theater with Jason Reynolds to talk about his work, his love of learning, and to celebrate the amazing experts that are in the series and to premiere the series that evening on April the 5th. So we're really, really excited that we got Jason to come and be a part of it.
And the idea here is some sort of instruction for people. People are supposed to take away from this a real empowerment around the ideas and the material. And again, Shari, that's where your work really overlaps with what they're doing here at Urban Consulate.
Yeah, I'm really excited for folks to hear from all of the experts. I feel like my modules and in session are really an opportunity to think about what radical imagination looks like, what it looks like to bring an Afrofuturist lens to this work, what it looks like to think about us surviving and thriving and building a blueprint toward that. And so I'm excited to share those reflections. I'm really excited to also hear from the other incredible experts in the series.
Yeah. Orlando, talk more about how this overlaps with this moment in Detroit and the things that we are doing, the things that we are thinking about, the things that we're talking about all of a sudden. This is a really different time than just 3 or 5 years ago in the city in terms of how activated I feel like people are around this question of who gets to have a say, who gets to sit at the table, who gets to make the decisions.
Well, first off, I love that question, Stephen. And, the consciousness of Detroiters has been rising by the minute. And what is reflective of that is the In Session series. And so when folks are talking about, architecture and activism in architecture, when you walk into a new space, how does it make your soul and spirit feel, right? Do you feel welcomed by the architecture? Is it reflective of a culture that is familiar to you? And Dr. Craig Wilkins breaks that down immaculately, right? We are always having conversations around development. Just yesterday, the City Council approved tax abatements for District Detroit. A lot of Detroiters have things to say about development and how it's done. Well, Darnell Adams has been at the forefront of a lot of equity-based development projects here in the city of Detroit, whether it is closing the gap on that capital stack in the Performer or his role currently at the Gilbert Family Foundation and implementing a $500 million spend down, right? Mm-hmm. So he's there to talk about that and how he's been doing it. And for me, what's so important is that Detroit is the largest majority Black city in the nation, right? Does the record reflect that? And if not, how do we get the record to reflect that, right? How do we get Black people on record? How do we get Black folks to recognize the power that already exists within themselves to tell their stories and to document what is observed? Is so important. And so, so many things that are literally reflective of the time that we're living in, and we didn't anticipate that, but it happened.
Yeah. Well, I guess the hope is that this adds fuel to the fire, right? This pushes all of those things and all of that consciousness to a higher level. Tell people how they can attend the talk with Jason Reynolds on April 5th.
Well, we're sold out. So
we're sold out.
Listen, we're sold out. We sold out the Garden Theater. But there is a wait list. More seats will open up, so you can go to urbanconsulate.com to sign up for the wait list. And hopefully we'll see you at April 5th, 6:30 at the Garden Theater.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. All right. Orlando and Shari, congratulations on the work. And thanks very much for being here with us on American Black Journal.
Thanks,
Thank you.
We just love jazz violinist Regina Carter, who grew up right here in Detroit. She is one of this year's recipients of the National Endowment for the Arts Jazz Masters Fellowship. The honorees were celebrated at a tribute concert in Washington, D.C., and received a $25,000 award. Linda Yohn of 90.9 WRCJ talked with Carter about this latest honor and Detroit's influence on her amazing musical career.
To kick off Jazz Appreciation Month 2023, at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., you, Kenny Garrett, and Louis Hayes will be featured in concert to receive your NEA Jazz Master Awards. This is a banner day for jazz in general and for Detroit jazz specifically.
I'm over the moon, as the old people would say. I'm still in disbelief, I'm so honored. And the fact that it's 3 Detroiters, I couldn't be more proud of my city. It's amazing on one hand that the 3 of us are from Detroit, but it's not amazing. It's just the city. Detroit is extremely unique and special.
It sure is. But see, the thing is that this is not your first rodeo. This is not your first major award. I mean, you are a MacArthur Genius grantee. So what is the difference between, say, the NEA Jazz Master Award and some of the many other awards and accolades, all deserved, I might add, that have come your way?
Every award is very special. They're like green lights, if you will, I call them, to say you're on the right path. And everyone has their own path, their own journey. And so sometimes it feels like when you're out here doing music, being self-employed, sometimes it's like, what am I doing? And I think that's probably everyone at certain points in our lives. We question what we're doing. But any award that I've received, I feel like it's a green light, like, yes, keep going, you're on the right track. And of course, winning the MacArthur was that was so huge for me in my life. And then being a Doris Duke artist as well after that. And then on top of it, I'm blown away. I know that the music comes through me, not from me. And just having life experiences and allowing those experiences to help guide me and to guide my music. And I've had some opportunities that I never even thought about early on in my career or in my life. There's so many ways in which to use music, and the longer I live, I can serve. I love playing for audiences and touring, but I can also play for people in nursing homes, hospitals. I do hospice work and end of life work. And so all of that feeds my soul and helps. And yeah, it just helps me to stay humble.
Other aspect of Regina Carter that's just super important is the variety in your recordings. Of course, I go back all the way to the Straight Ahead days, but then when you started out and you were doing your own sessions, you decided, or I don't know if you decided it, but someone decided that there should be variety in the presentations.
Well, it's interesting. I recorded with Atlantic 2 solo records, and those records were considered smooth jazz, whatever that means. So, and when I signed with Verve, they wanted more of a straight ahead. And I remember turning in my first record, and the A&R, the artist and repertoire person assigned to me, said, "Well, your music is all over the place. People won't know how to categorize you or what." And I said, I'm not going to pick one thing. I love all of this music. It's just music. And growing up in Detroit and listening to the radio stations, we heard such a wide variety of music under that umbrella of jazz on the stations. There was Motown. And then, of course, you drive anywhere in the city You might hear, if you go to Greek Town, you'd hear some Greek classical music, or Mexican Village, you'd hear authentic Mexican folk music. Mariachi, you might hear, there was the Chaldean section of town. So there was all of this music from all these different ethnic groups that were living in and around Detroit. So all of those sounds were in my head. And when Ye and our guy said, well, you have to pick one, I said, I can't. All these sounds are there. So I need to be able to express music.
Lastly today, we want to recognize the life and legacy of human rights activist and lawyer Randall Robinson. He recently passed away at the age of 81. Robinson served as administrative assistant to Detroit Congressman Charles Stiggs Jr. in the mid-1970s, and after a congressional trip to South Africa, Robinson founded Trans-Africa, a high-profile lobbying organization that helped reshape U.S. foreign policy toward apartheid in that country. Robinson appeared on Detroit Public Television in a 1984 national town hall on the state of Black America.
Randall Robinson, you have spent a long time in Washington, on Capitol Hill, working with the Black Caucus. Now, as the head of a Black lobbying organization, you have seen Black people try to hold Black politicians accountable. Is it possible over the long haul? Are Blacks being successful, at least in holding the Congressional Black Caucus accountable?
Well, certainly in foreign policy, the problem is not with the Black politician. The Congressional Black Caucus has demonstrated a tremendously increasing interest in foreign policy questions. Black mayors and elected officials across the country have as well. The problem is with the tradition of American policy towards the third world. I was thinking as we were talking about Jesse's ascendancy being a sort of happy end of a continuum, but when we look at American foreign policy in the Caribbean, in Central America, in Southern Africa, in Africa in general, in the Middle East, and across the globe, we see tragic results of a policy that is rested on the notion that the Soviet Union is responsible for everything that goes wrong in the world. Whatever side the Soviets get on, the United States gets on the other side. So that one wonders if at least once in this country's diplomacy, it will ever end up on the right social justice side of any issue. And I think increasingly Americans are learning more about this, and the Congressional Black Caucus is taking a leadership role, but much more has to be done. I think the sophistication of Black Americans must increase to a point where they know that our destinies are indissolubly tied to the destinies of those who struggle for freedom in Southern Africa, those who struggle in Cuba, those who struggle in Haiti, those who struggle in Central America. And we've got to separate, I think, the good from the bad. When we look at a Central American policy that sees an invasion every 3 years for the last 150 years, whenever any country gets cheeky with the United States, we simply march in and overthrow governments. It has nothing to do with democracy, has nothing to do with social justice. It has everything to do with countries practicing serious self-determination. One takes a country like Cuba. Blacks in Cuba make up 30% of the population. They're doing enormously better than they did under the Batista regime. Infant mortality is lower than it is in the District of Columbia. The lifespan has been increased from 59 to 72 years, yet Cuba is a government this administration and previous administrations have tried to strangle for the last 20 years. But we prop up Haiti, and we prop up South Africa. We're trying to finish Nicaragua. We're trying to support a tremendously corrupt regime in El Salvador. So that I think it behooves all of us to look behind what we read in media in the United States, to see how the people in these countries are faring. Because for most of the people who live and struggle around the world, it's not a question of capitalism or communism. It's a question of 3 meals a day-ism, a question of a roof over my head-ism, an education, a place to go to school. So that I think we have to examine all of these things, but the problem is not with the black elected official. The problem is with a tradition in the country that has ignored the plight of the dispossessed all across the third world.
Randall Robinson moved his family to his wife's native island of St. Kitts in 2001 to escape the racism and discrimination that exists here in America. He remained there until his death on March 24th. That's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for watching, and you can find out more about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can connect with us anytime on Facebook and on Twitter. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.